Well, thank you all for attending our session. I'm Andrew. I'm a Senior Professional Services Engineer at Jamf. The Professional Services team, our role is to help our customers succeed with their Apple technology. We traditionally handle onboarding, consultancy services. As for why I think you should listen to me talking about software updates and lifecycle management, application lifecycle management, I was involved in the talk last year about software updates for Jamf Nation Live. And this is something that we talk about very frequently with our customers in the professional services team. I always like to tell audiences a fun fact. I'm a musician in my other time, a bass player. I was actually trying to find some way to fit a slap bass solo into this presentation, but maybe next year.
Hi, my name's Ben Toms. You might know me as Mac Mule. I joined Jamf last July during the data jar acquisition. At Jamf, my role is being defined. I've got the old role, the new role, and a role bridging the two of them. So hopefully, if I stand up on stage next year, I can actually have a definition of what my role is. Little fun fact for me as well, a little bit. So Andrew was saying he's a musician. I came into IT from working in music studios, and we've both got a love of metal, and I've got a bulged disc in my neck from headbanging too much. So that shows like the idiocy and bullheadedness I've got sometimes. I'll just carry on.
Can we get a show of horns from the audience, from the metalheads out there? Wonderful. There's always a few in here.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Nice. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, there's four main sections to this. So we talk about the software updates versus application management. What are the differences, how are we defining them, and what are some of the challenges? We're then going to go into detail around those two areas as well. So software updates, some of the new workflows we've got available, and application lifecycle management, and specifically around the methodologies available and looking to establish one within your organization. And then a wrap up. What does it mean for you? Any takeaways for yourselves? And there is unfortunately a little bit of homework.
There will not be a test, just some homework. All right, so software updates or versus application lifecycle management. I don't love the word versus, but we wrote it on screen in any case. Of course, presentation last year, if we reflect back to that, was just about software updates. So clearly we think there's a distinction between these two things. So we'd like to turn this question over to the audience. What is the difference between software updates and application lifecycle management? What does that mean to you? Can we get any hands up? Anyone shout out?
Don't be scared.
Tough crowd. Oh, we've got one there.
So updates versus upgrades. Do you mean that on an OS level or application level, or both? Yes. Okay, that was the answer, yes.
Okay.
So both, yes.
Yeah.
So when we talk about software updates, we're categorizing these as updates that are minor major updates for your OS, your rapid security response, which came in a couple of OSs ago, and the built-in security stuff, so your X-Protect, definitions, etc., as well as Safari updates and things which can also come under your RSRs as well. And Excel command line tools, in essence, the stuff that comes from Apple directly, essentially. And you know, part of the thing of this is looking at how people adopt them. And most importantly for this, there's two things. One is the emojis that come out with every release, and obviously if you're beta testing, the gorgeous new desktop backgrounds as well.
And then the application lifecycle management side, we're really talking about the apps that are being deployed into that operating system environment. Although we're quite keen to underline the point that it's not just the installation, it's not the updates of those installations of those apps, it's also the maintenance and the monitoring of those as well. So whereas we'll go into some more detail, typically we're getting the software updates directly from Apple. In the case of application lifecycle management, the components that make up those workflows come from all sorts of different places. So there are many varied delivery methods. And ultimately, the ones that you're going to choose might not be the same for every single app. So it's going to be very much determined by your organizational needs. And really wanting to hammer home that point, though, it's not just about getting the app onto the device, it's about understanding how it works, making sure that you've got all the different profiles to configure access to the systems that are required, and secure and monitor for compliance as well. Okay, so now we've established that there is a difference between those two things. We're going to go into each in a little bit more detail. So on the software update side, typically, as Ben's mentioned there, security updates for the most part, sometimes emoji updates. These are going to be typically applied to the current OS N-2, which we mean by the current version of macOS, iPadOS, iOS, tvOS, many OSs. So the current one, and then the two most recent releases. The actual security content of that is going to be coming in the latest point release that we'd have for each of those. So you could potentially consider, if you do have part of your fleet that's still running at this point, Monterey or Ventura, as long as they're on the latest point release, they should be patched for any identified security issues. Users can potentially apply some of these updates themselves, or we can push them with MDM commands, or in later OS releases with DDM, or declarative device management commands. And that's something that has been talked about a lot in a number of the sessions that have already gone today. So some big benefits to this approach about using this direct delivery method from Apple are, we know certainly that that update that we're getting is signed, it's secure. Apple have invested an awful lot into these systems on the devices to ensure that you're only going to be able to install something that is known and good. And this really helps to underline that we're getting from the right source. We trust where it's coming from. Most compliance benchmarks are requiring us to fairly speedily, in many cases, patch any known vulnerabilities in any OSs or any applications. But ultimately, we can't rely on users doing that self-updating. It's too important to leave it wholly down to the end user. Bringing back to that point of the MDM commands or the DDM commands, we're going to want to leverage them to help some of the users along.
And so when it comes to the MDM side, we've had these options available since macOS 10.11 and iOS 9, so a number of years now. And the commands themselves is a bit of a complex way that they go through, where your MDM will reach out to APNS and ask your device to check in. Your device checks in, your device gets the instructions what to do, then your device then goes to pull down the update. And the other thing that happens with this as well is, in this middle ground where your device is going through the motions, your MDM is also kind of nagging it, kind of going, have you done yet? Have you done yet? Have you done yet? Have you done yet? Now this obviously is more increased traffic, you're looking at more CPU resources, those type of things on these devices. It's really not very efficient, and it's a bit naggy, if I want to use a new word maybe, I don't know. So in the new world, if we talk about the DDM side of things, which was introduced in macOS Sonoma and iOS, iPadOS 17, and largely there is still APNS involved, but essentially the MDM says, you go and do the update, and let me know when you're done. And that's when the device comes back and says, I've done it. It's a bit like, you know, when your kids are like, hey, could you go and get some milk? Are you going to call them every 5 seconds, say, have you got it? Have you got it yet? Have you got it yet? No. They get the milk, they come back and say, got the milk. So it's a much lighter protocol in regards to the overhead of networking and like CPU cycles, etc. And it gives you that declarative model where the device says, I am now doing the update, or I've done the update, etc.
So let's have a look at the software update experience in Jamf Pro. As we mentioned, this is something that is relatively new, so we're talking macOS 14 Sonoma, iOS, iPadOS 17 and newer. You've got to ensure that your cloud services connection is enabled. Admittedly, that's one I missed on the first time I tested this out, and that's an afternoon I'm not getting back. We've all been there. This is currently exclusive to Jamf Cloud because there is a cloud-hosted dependency. It's not the cloud service connection, but there are parts of the infrastructure which we're reliant on that aren't currently able to be integrated with on-premise environments. And for macOS, I've hammered on about us growing Bootstrap tokens last year in that they were going to become an even more important part of our management workflows, but very important to have one of those because it's required to authorize the update for macOS. So if you're not monitoring Bootstrap tokens in your environment, then absolutely you want to be doing that. That's one thing you take away from today. So actually in the new experience in Jamf Pro, you can see up here on our MacBook that we've got an ability to enable this. So after you go ahead and do the enabling, you're then going to be able to see a list of groups. So we can go ahead and select a number of them if we want to, and be able to send commands to both computers and also to mobile devices. So you can do the same things through the same workflow. So it does help to simplify the experience a bit. Okay, we've got our install actions here. So this might be somewhat familiar from our mass action workflows. A lot of this really maps over in terms of what you'd be used to there. But we have to select from our install actions at the top there. Bear in mind that these install actions, they are platform and they are OS version dependent. So we want to send appropriate commands to appropriate devices. And the UI does support informing you if you are going to be trying to send types of commands that aren't supported to the wrong kind of platforms. Additionally, if you've got multiple smart groups, some in the computer sphere, some in mobile devices, you get to set different target versions, for example. But as I say, you want to make sure you're going to send something that's appropriate for the platform, so it can be helpful to have a certain level of granularity with your groups. And then you'll be able to go and queue up and send those. The commands that's on here, the one we've got highlighted in the middle there, the download and schedule to install, that's our fancy new DDM-driven workflow. So that's really the one we enjoy, the one we like. And that needs to be combined with a target version option. So from that, we can either go with latest available version that's appropriate for the device, or alternatively, latest major, latest minor, or a specific version. One little shout out, we also spend a lot of time talking about Jamf Pro. In Jamf School, there are some clever implementations of the older MDM workflow, where you can also send along a command to clear a passcode on a device. Of course, on iOS and iPadOS devices, with the traditional workflow, you do need to go ahead and clear the passcode to then be able to apply. It's very useful in educational environments when you may not have the devices being attended, but they are secure somewhere in a cart. And then subsequently, if there is a requirement for a passcode, that's then going to be prompted for the next time somebody interacts with that device, can reset it.
Okay, so here's a bit of an overview of a video showing you this type of the workflow we just talked about here. So you go into your Jamf Pro instance, and within here you go to software updates. You need to enable this first of all. It will clear any pending software update commands. But with the service now enabled, as Andrew said, you can now choose the groups that you want to deploy this update to. With that open, again, these are similar options to what Andrew showed you a moment ago. But what I want you to know on this is when you choose the time to install, that's the device's time. So if you say midday, that'll be midday on that device. So time zones, you need to be mindful of that at the same time. So we're going to make sure these devices have the latest version installed about 3 p.m. that day. And it will start processing to pass it through. Okay. So let's have a look at what these type of things would look like from a user's point of view. So here's an iOS device. Yeah. So in here, they can go and actually see the declarations under General, VPN and Device Management, MDM Profiles, Configuration, and there's the declaration. So here we've got the device told it to upgrade to 17.5 at midday. Now, I did actually just skip one thing on this though, unfortunately. Does anyone know why it says 9:41? No? Sorry? Is that the time shown on the demo device? Yes, that's the time that the original iPhone was released. Cool. But what distracted you with that? What's happening in the background here? The device is notified that an update's going to be in 10 minutes, the update's in 5 minutes, and now an update's overdue. The device logs in, so put the passcode in, as Andrew said, so we can do the update. And on here, the update is now going through. So there's an option there. If there's an emergency phone number, like if you're in an emergency, you can phone 999, you can call that. Otherwise, the update goes through. So the person whose device it is will get these notifications in advance that this is going to happen. And then when it does happen, they've got that feedback again, they can click the button, but this is going to force them onto these versions. We're going to look at the macOS experience now. It's somewhat similar. There's been some video trickery here as well, so some of it has sped up a bit. So the update notification is sent around 10:54 to the device, but the update itself is scheduled for midday. And the device itself, you can see in there the updates that are available. We should now fast forward shortly to 11:59 and then start doing a countdown, which I can't see here.
No, it is counting down there.
All right. You know when you record a video for a presentation, it always seems longer when you're up on stage, right? But we have cut this one up a bit, he says.
Oh, we're going 20 seconds. It's ticking along there. Can we get a countdown for the last 10?
Yeah, here we go.
There we go, right. 10.
9, 8, 7. We tried. An attempt was made. See, so the last 10 seconds were in real time on that, and the update is now forced, so the device is going to then run through and run the update on there as well. So this again gives you the user experience around this and how this works for them. So again, prior notification, it happens on a deadline at a time, and the device will do the update.
Okay, so had a little bit of a look how we send some of those update commands out using Jamf Pro. We've also looked at what that end user experience is, so we know what to expect when those commands apply onto the devices. I want to talk a bit about monitoring. So we need to know what needs to be patched in our environment. I think ultimately one of the great powers that we have is just having that visibility, so we need to leverage the information that's available to us and allows us to make the right choices. There are various methods that we have for doing this. The preferred method in macOS is going to be driven by the patch management titles. So what we can do, we have patch management titles for all of the most recent releases of macOS. What you can do is add those specific titles in. And what that will do is it will add a latest version criteria to smart groups for that particular version of macOS. It's a really, really handy way to define the latest version as opposed to having to go manually update point releases. So we can take that across and we can build a smart group. The benefit of that, of having the smart group, is it allows us to send appropriate commands to the devices. Because at that point, right, well, I know the stuff that's on Sonoma that needs to be updated. I know I'm going to try and send the Sonoma devices a schedule to install command, because that's typically the best experience. But then you can separate anything in your environment that's still using Ventura and say, okay, well, I'm going to pick what I think the best experience is for Ventura and send them those. So a very simple way of dividing them out. And then, of course, with the patch management title, get a really nice experience on the Jamf Pro dashboard with hopefully lots and lots of green circles demonstrating that everything's up to date. On the iOS side, we're going to be using, or iPadOS side as well, we're going to be using smart groups typically for that. So we can use a combination of two OS version criteria, one of which narrows down to the wider major version of iOS or iPadOS. So that would be an OS version like 17 dot, for example. So something that contains 17 dot. In addition to, we're going to have an and then an OS version criteria is less than, and then our latest version. We do have to manually update the version number at the end for the iOS ones. On the Jamf School side, there's actually some really, really rich information within the console there. So the kinds of things we can see timestamps for when updates were downloaded. We can see the updates that were available from the software update catalog through in school. We can also see percentages as well. So if we're sending an update flow, there's some really, really useful and powerful tools within school for us to be able to see those things. And then finally, on this point of monitoring, if you want to go and look at some of this stuff yourself, go ahead and schedule a DDM update, and then come into either in macOS, into the settings app, system settings app, or into the settings app on iOS or iPadOS to come and actually look at the declarations, which is fun if you're doing that on a test device. It's nice to see these things.
So even though we've got all these brand new workflows that work very well, maybe you've emailed your new team, your customers, users, whatever way you call them, that on Monday at midday an update's going to be deployed to their device, knowing well it's regionalized or localized as per their zone. Things might still go wrong. So currently within Jamf Pro, you can access data via the API that can advise what's happened there. It could be the cloud services connection has expired, could be that the OS itself is unsupported, maybe the device isn't supervised, maybe the device hasn't got enough disk space, maybe the device hasn't got enough battery, etc., etc., etc. These type of things. So there is a Jamf KB, which gives you all these things as well. So it's helpful to actually review that and keep that on board, because this will become more and more common as these workflows are more widely adopted. But at the moment, that's just available through the API.
Hopefully you got that QR code there. So for those of us who are API averse, coming soon to Jamf Pro near you, we're going to be bringing a lot of that same information through into the GUI. So we're enhancing the reporting for the software update workflow, so the new software update workflow. So we can see some examples here of, in our management tab, we've got an update in progress. This is one of our scheduled to install commands. There will be in the history tab, a bit more detailed information we can go and find. We've got an example here defined as got a failed plan, and that's down to it's unable to find any updates, and it's hit its retry limit. And then finally, if you really want to dig into it in more detail, you can head through into the details tab of that history one and look at the actual event store. So this is all of the raw data that is currently visible if you go searching for it in the API. So as I say, coming soon. I want to make a note we've spent quite a bit of time here talking about the technology that's available to us, and that's obviously what we want to do, show you the latest and greatest from our platforms. But I feel we'd be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit of time talking about the non-technological methods. So one of the observations that we have in professional services is that the teams that we work with who have a lot of success with compliance, with updates, it's really a team effort with their end users. So I think the ones that struggle are where they've sort of got into this place where, I don't know, sometimes things can become a little bit adversarial with end users not doing their updates. So I just wanted to take a few moments to call out the benefits and the strategies that you might want to use to try and encourage your end users to be a bit more cooperative when it comes to doing updates. And I think part of that is understanding why is it that maybe our end users are reticent to perform those updates. It could be that they've had bad experiences in the past. I mean, having to do an update, there is a certain level of inconvenience in having to restart. If you're in the middle of something, you just don't find the time, or maybe you don't think it's important enough as an end user. So I think recognizing those different reasons they might have for not doing it is a helpful way to approach it, because it allows us to start to address it, which is to start to build our an organizational practice, set expectations, ensure that your end users from day one, when you're setting up their experience on the devices, that they have that understanding that this is something that they need to do. Ally with other people in the organization as well. So make sure that this is an expectation that is not only coming from your teams, but also elsewhere from the organization. So it's coming both from IT and also top down through the organization. Another really handy thing you can do as well to give yourself as much time and resources as possible to be successful with any new major updates would be to be part of the Appleseed for IT program. So can I get a show of hands? Who's heard of Appleseed for IT? Okay, maybe about 25%, a third of the room. And of those, who is actively testing the betas out at the minute? Probably about half as many there. I would really strongly encourage people to go and check out beta.apple.com/IT and get some of those beta versions in testing. One of the things we quite commonly hear is concerns around 90 days not being quite enough to do your testing when there's a new major update out. Actually, we've got 90 days plus all the time from WWDC. So the sooner that you get in there and see what still works and what doesn't work or needs to be updated with your existing workflows, the more prepared you can be, and it'd be a wonderful world if we can just go straight into day one of a new major release and be able to encourage our users to go and get the latest and greatest technologies and leverage all the power of their Apple devices.
And so whilst we have several options built into Jamf Pro and Jamf's other MDMs, there might be other requirements that come up after you speak to the organization and you make those decisions. So luckily, Jamf's MDMs are pretty malleable. There's often stuff you can add to them. So for example, here's 4 that can help within this space. So Nudge can nudge your users and hopefully get them to go through those workflows within a timeline to get them to update when it suits them, but within your time frame. You can't say, for example, that you know that at 3 o'clock no one's going to be using their device, etc., because they might well be in a meeting, all that stuff there. So you put the power bit on them, you still nag them, and it nags more and more and more towards the end of that time. Superman is a nice wrapper around the MDM-based workflows as well that helps bring people along and get those updates on their devices. Erase install. Now, this is a bit different. I wouldn't apply this to update devices for people. Probably just avoid it, because you can imagine the erase in the name means the Mac's erased. And Sofa is a new community project that came out recently, which is a lovely looking web application that gives you details about OS releases, CVEs patched, and that data as well, which can really help when you're looking at threats, etc., on your team.
Okay, so that was software updates. We're going to go onwards to application lifecycle management now. Okay, a bit more audience participation. We're hoping for more engagement this time. So, application lifecycle management. Based on what we've said, what does this bit mean to you then?
Where you'll have like core organizational apps that you always want to get up to date, but you might have maybe dev apps or others that need to be held in certain versions based on certain workflows.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So just to repeat that. So we're talking about apps where there'll be different upgrade cycles, so there might be some that are like low-hanging fruit, you want to get them upgraded as soon as possible. There might be others that you maybe want to update on a slightly slower cycle because of the impact. We'll talk about this as well. What kind of tools are you folks using with your workflows? Any names you can mention? Patch management. Data jar, thank you. Installamator, brilliant. Jamf catalog, Jamf app catalog, yes, brilliant. So that's all these different options that we've got as well of approaching this.
Okay, so some excellent answers there. Thank you very much. So a very common request we have in conversations with our PS engineers. Seems very, very simple, and starts off this statement. This request of, we would like to deploy and update apps. And of course we have to say, how would we like to do that? And then we usually get bombarded with, well, we want to use to install them ourselves, or control what different versions they're going to do. Do you want to do some of them as soon as possible? Oh no, we want to hold that one back. Or we want to report on this one, or actually we don't really care too much about this one. And actually we've gone all of a sudden from having what seems like a very simple request to it's pretty complicated. And what's going to be best, as the gentleman who answered there answered, there's a sense of we've got to do different things for different apps. So really that kind of initial simple question often becomes really quite complex. So we want to talk about the sort of the methodology that we can use to approach that. And we feel that we've got the tools to help deal with that.
But which two tools do you use? How do you deploy them, etc.? It depends. This is the shortest answer to this. Again, it's your organizational need and those type of things. And when we're looking at these, what are your priorities? Are you looking at straight away the gold standard in end user experience? And to you, what does that mean for your organization? Does that mean it's user-led updates, or does that mean updating in the background when they're not using the applications? Have you got strict compliance requirements? Do you have to push out updates with a certain CVSS score, etc., within a short window? Or is it like this organizational need? And this kind of comes back to the earlier mention about the dev apps and that. What if you're an educational environment and you update Final Cut, Logic, etc., and it completely changes the course, so the GUI changes, etc., and that's in the middle of a term. So there might end up being different approaches that you take depending on your organization and kind of your answers to these things and what you need to build out. But it's work. You need to have that conversation with your organization and then look at what you've got within the Jamf MDMs and also the additional things that you can add to extend them further as well.
And when we've considered what we're going to have in terms of our broad organizational need versus security versus end user experience, and probably on a per app basis as well, we're going to want to go through and categorize how quickly we do those updates or how slowly we might do them. Broadly speaking, we kind of view there being effectively three categories here. Our fast and furious ones are web browsers, security tools, MFA brokers, stuff that just needs to be patched yesterday. Really, really critical, and typically the stuff that maybe would benefit most from patching. Our view is very much as best to ask for forgiveness, beg for forgiveness and ask for permission on that one. We've then got our category 2 stuff here, which is email clients, office software, really, really important, but also very critical to the operations and the use of the staff, of your end users. It's important to do the updates, but also we want to put some concern towards any disruption that might happen with those. And then finally, we've got our slow and steady updates. Examples of these might be things like Logic or Avid or or various kind of creative applications. Ones where there are other concerns that come in about, for example, maybe you've got an educational environment. You've built all of your course material based on a particular version of Ableton Live, and you go ahead and move to a new major version, or you patch it, or something changes that stops some of those workflows or that documentation or that course material being valid. So in that, we've got an example where we've got a balance where maybe we want to try and hold back on some of those updates in favor of trying to preserve that end user experience.
And there's different methods in which we can get these applied. So we're going to look at the technology that we can use here, how these things can be deployed, consideration around the end user experience, and the version control. So we look at the App Store. These are the Apple's method for deploying VPP items to a device, or install them manually using their Apple ID. So the underlying technology generally as an MDM will be your APNS commands, MDM commands, etc. for the VPP side. Through all of Jamf's MDMs, you can install them via automatically, or you can install them via self-service, ad hoc. There's really not much user interaction. The applications themselves will update when they're not in use. You might get some alerts about it having to be closed maybe, but in general, especially on the macOS side, there isn't much interaction for the user. Now, in regards to what version control it has, it's essentially that version. There are times when maybe an older version is available for an older OS with severe enough CVE, but in general, it's that current version is what's available to them. And this is where the automatic updates, where you can have them optional, so you can have it automatically deploy an update via your MDM, or the user drive that again via self-service. Just to clarify on this, the asterisks on there are the ones that are just valid for Jamf Pro, but in general, the other items are going to be available within Jamf Now and Jamf School. So, the Jamf App Catalog. So having said that, I mean, how many folks realise that Jamf App Catalog is available across Jamf Now, Jamf School, and Jamf Pro?
I think that's two
people?
hands.
3 people, there you go. So this is the MDM-driven workflow to install applications. Again, because it's MDM-driven, it's using the similar stuff as what VPP will be using. And within Jamf Pro, you can also have these items installed via self-service. You can customize the notifications, deferrals, etc. You can force a deadline and a grace period as well. So again, this thing needs to be updated on this date, but if they're in a 3-hour-long Chrome meeting thing, whatever, they can't quit Chrome, they can do that afterwards. You can start to notify them and get the customers, your users, to work with you on this as well. And currently, we're looking at its current time of deployment for regards to the versioning. But again, you could have it deployed to a set of devices, change your scope, and then not update it from there if you wanted to. So package and policy stuff. So this is all the Jamf Pro stuff. This is when you can create a policy. You can use patch reporting for this as well to find out who's got what installed and where. This can be available automatically via your self-service side of things. You can put your notifications in. You can change all that. You can force it, the deadline. There's lots and lots of options here as well. But the nice thing about this is you can set the version. If there's a requirement for you to have a particular version of an app, you can set that through the package and policy side and even offer downgrades as well. But again, this comes to these other things that you could do. There are a number of other methods available for this as well, and they can extend it based again on what your workflow is and what you as an organization decide that you want to do and how you want to approach this.
And for this demonstration, I'm going to be Ben's glamorous assistant. So we're going to look at how we deploy a Jamf App Catalog title. So we're going to go into the Computers menu. We're going to go into Mac Apps, which is traditionally just the purview of the App Store, and then we're going to select a Jamf App Catalog title after hitting New. We're going to go ahead and select Jamf Check, which is an application written by our very talented colleague Tice. And then we're just going to go ahead and have to select a target, which is a smart computer group. We're going to choose how we want to deploy, automatic in this case, and then typically check the install additional configuration profiles option, just in case there's something there. And then, of course, if we wanted to, we could go ahead and customize any of the additional deferral options, but these are also available to set globally. And that's it. Everyone to go ahead and just do install on the machine and automatically update. So very, very simple, very, very easy. Currently in the catalog at last time of checking, but it's always ticking up, so I'm probably wrong now. I'm sure somebody will pull me up on it if it is, but 180 apps. Really, really simple workflow. Please do go ahead and try it if you're not already using it, or if you've used it in the past and bounced off it. Go back, give it a look. It's really, really powerful. It's going to help you streamline your deployments with a certain level of simplicity. And obviously, for those of us using Pro and policies, very, very powerful technology, but does require a bit more. We've got to get our packages, upload them to our distribution point, or we've got to load up a script, and we've got to add other variables and other information in that to get it to behave the way that we want it to. Whereas this is just a couple of clicks, very, very simple, giving you more options. There's granular update notifications, as I mentioned. We can do it on a per app basis, or we can just inherit them globally. One of the very common workflows we've used recently in our professional services is that if we want to utilize this purely as a patching method, you can create a smart computer group for the app that you want to patch. For example, take the Jamf Check app. If you were deploying it by some other means, maybe you want some additional flexibility in terms of the initial install, create a group that identifies with the application title of jamfcheck.app, and that forms the basis of our targeting. So at that point, you're only going to be doing the automatic install workflow on machines that already have that app. Therefore, it can be used purely as a method for patching.
And with the Jamf App Catalog, there's been a number of changes over recent Jamf Pro releases. So if it is something that you visited once, it's probably a good time to come back and look at it again. There's a lot more functionality available, and this path is going to carry on with more and more things being added to the product.
Let's all just drink this in for a moment. I'm sure we're all familiar with this on a system that we haven't done much configuration on. Not really a great end user experience, one that we absolutely want to avoid. So the piece around application lifecycle management, it does not end with just deploying or doing the updates. Really, that's the tip of the iceberg. It's all of the configuration that happens behind that. So we also need to think about the configurations we're going to deploy. Not only does it relate specifically to functionality, so let's take an endpoint security tool as an example. We quite probably need a full disk access PPPC profile. We very likely will need some form of system extension approval deploying. Doing anything with the network stack, we'll need a content filter profile deploying. And also to make sure the end user can't go and turn it off by disabling the launch theme and the launch agent, we're probably going to need a managed login item as well. So at least for there may be notifications which are generated by the app. Ideally, for something that we've installed on their behalf, we don't want them to have to make those decisions and deal with lots of pop-ups. Moving beyond that, though, we should also consider that where can we go and enhance the value and the experience for the end users with the configurations we deploy. So on macOS, we've got application and custom settings, which is fantastic sort of catch-all payload where we can put things to address all sorts of preference domains. On the iOS and iPadOS devices, we've got app config. And there's lots of options on a per app basis where we can add in additional workflows that maybe want to pre-fill a user's email address into an app. We could use a payload variable to insert that information that we've already captured through an interaction when they were coming through with the enrollment. So let's not just think about it in terms of purely functionality. Let's also try and identify how can we add some extra value, some extra experience. How can we do something nice for our end users just to add that spark to their experience.
And so just like our software update deployments, we're going to want to monitor and report on what's installed and where. So there's several different ways you can do this within Jamf Pro. You've got your patch management side of things. There's around 800 titles with patch definitions available within Jamf Pro. But again, this comes back to Andrew said earlier about the number. That's gone up quite a bit, I think. We haven't got, it's 800 plus, I'd say, available for you. And within that as well, you've obviously got your smart groups and your advanced searches, and then you can do your reporting off them as well, get an email about who's got what installed and where, based on whatever criteria you set for them as well. Now, when it comes to the Jamf App Catalog, there's lots more reporting now built in, such as what's shown on the screen there. It can give you those nice green for good, red for not, etc. reporting, and really show you the state of your fleet when they're being patched and updated via Jamf App Catalog. So the other place as well, we've kind of touched this a few times already, there's also the Jamf Marketplace as well. So a number of the applications that are in there should work with Jamf Pro, but they will probably also work with Jamf School and Jamf Now to an extent as well. So many different versions, so many different things in here, but for example, I'm a big fan of Auto Package. and then using that to upload content into your Jamf environment via something like Jamf Uploader, which I'm very fortunate. So your colleague Graham, who looks after that as well. You've also got Jamjar. It wouldn't be me if I didn't try and toot my own horn on one of the things that I've written. So that's in there now. And of course, Installamator and other solutions like that, as well as things such as the patching workflows and systems available from partners like Electrona.
Right. Well, we said there was going to be some homework. So, your mission, should you choose to accept it. So, we want you to go away and try the new software update workflow if you're not doing so already. Try and replicate what we've demonstrated in the demos today. If you do struggle with anything, please do dig into, currently, via the API endpoints, the QR code that we referenced earlier has a lot of very valuable information about what those different codes are. So please do go and give it a go and see how fantastic an experience it really is.
And on the QR code, sorry for clicking a bit too quick, but if you Google Manage Software Updates in Jamf Pro, I believe that should bring up the KB for you as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Well, just very briefly on this last slide, we also want you to try the Jamf app catalog as well. So again, even if it's just down to using the software update workflow that we described with that smart group, please do and give that a go. And yes, as Ben says, any questions either in the app or in person?
We do have a number of questions. Before we do, can we raise the roof for Ben and Andrew, please? A fantastic presentation. Thank you, Jack. Well done. Well done. I'm gonna throw these out there and see which one of you catches these. Let's start with our friend Jamie at THG. Hey, Jamie. Are there any plans to allow non-admins to update macOS on Apple Silicon Macs?
I don't believe you do need to be an admin. It's more tied into volume ownership. So
Yeah, be having the bootstrap token escrowed into the MDM, and the DDM and MDM workflows can then use that, and the user doesn't need to be an admin themselves.
Yeah, and as before, let's. We've got roaming mics, so we can add a bit of colour, Jamie, if you feel free, to add a bit of colour to the question as well. We can come back on that, actually, but that's good. Should we take Tom? Thanks.
Hello. Just wondering what the best way is to request new apps for Jamf app catalog.
That's a fantastic question.
I believe it might be ideas.jamf.com, a feature request being put in there,
Yeah.
from what I understand. I'll probably get told I'm wrong now, but I believe that's the best way to do that.
Yeah.
You should find some there as well.
I mean, come and see us at the end, and we'll nail that one down. But excellent question.
Yeah, you bet. Let's take one from the app. Jack at Lloyd's. Hey, Jack. With DDM software updates, can these be managed with deployment rings and not on a one-size-fits-all?
Well, in terms of your targeting, the DDM updates, you're in control of what goes out to what devices, because it's based on the groups that you select. So the onus would be very much on building out to there. I suppose I think inferred in the question is the idea that maybe we could just sort of send one and it would apply different versions to different devices. But if you want to hold a particular set of users at a particular version, you can use a combination of the configuration profiles that would allow you to delay updates for a period of time. And one thing to note is the configuration profile that defers the software updates, that's about visibility from the device for those software updates. So it wouldn't be incompatible to manage different time periods for deferrals, as in bringing in your update ring workflow, to make sure that certain devices are having a longer period of time for deferral, and you can still send them those commands, and because the device effectively doesn't see the update, different devices will respond differently. So that's one way you could affect that workflow.
And we also saw earlier on mention of a change at WWDC and a change that will look to come into the MDMs down the line, where you could actually have devices on beta releases as well. So you could then have your small testing group as well of people. So with the Apple C for IT program, signing up for that, looking at those testing plans and actually testing those betas in your environment. And you can just kind of go from beta testing to release testing to rolling out further and sharding the deployment.
Very nice, thank you. Let's search for hands. We have a hand.
Thanks, guys. One quick question about the Jamf app catalog. Are there any plans to bake in an inventory update after an app has been installed? Because especially when you're using it for software patching, you don't see that that device has actually been patched until the next inventory update runs.
I believe that's already been added. It's not an inventory update. I'm fairly sure there's a... I'm going to have to double check this. I'm doubting myself. It's been a long day. But I'm fairly sure we added that in a recent release, did we not?
Yeah, there's the application list update, and then there's the Jamf binary recon inventory update.
It's not a recon that it'll trigger, but I'm doubting myself now. But I'm fairly sure that we are now in a position where, after having performed the install, there is part of the MDM framework that's used in conjunction with the recon, and we don't do the recon part of it, to let Jamf Pro know that the app is installed. But I will double check on that one and make sure that we get an answer for you.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I think just along as well, Mark, chap in the red shirt, you have a question?
So this is definitely the chatty part of the audience over here.
Don't worry.
Hi, just on Jamf Auto Update, or what was formerly DataJar, so your software.
Yeah, so it was auto update for Jamf. For now, it's Jamf auto update. Yes.
Yeah, so is that going to be added to Jamf Pro, or will that be a paid update?
This is why people don't want me talking on stage. I need to be careful what I say here now.
How much has he got?
Yeah. Wait and see. I really can't. Unfortunately, I can't say anything about future plans or anything. You know, working for a publicly traded American company, I've learned I need to be quiet, which is very much against my nature. If people have had a beer with me, they know. But I mean, similar to the question earlier, though, I have been having conversations with the team that look after app installers and stuff as well. So just watch this space is all we can really say for now.
And one more quick one on DDM updates. Will they apply to the machine if no user's logged in, and what's the experience like if that does happen, or when that does happen?
So for macOS, when the DDM devices are logged in, it just goes through as normal, as far as I know.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, so what's the case when there's no user logged in?
It should just go through and do the update on the deadline, as far as I understand that. And the nice thing about these is generally the preparation of stuff's done before, so it should be a quicker install. When it's iOS, though, and iPadOS, that comes back to work for Andrew mentioned earlier, where you would, if the device hasn't got a passcode, you're good, but if the device has got a passcode, you want to clear that passcode before you have it. If you've got these unattended devices or Zoom room iPads or whatever you have.
Very good. Thank you. Great questions. Thanks, Luke. Scouring for hands.
Thank you. Thanks for a great presentation, guys. Just thinking in terms of nice little scenario, chief executive's presenting to the board, he sees that little countdown clock in DDM. How do I stop getting sacked?
This comes back to those conversations around your organisation defining your posture on things and having that communicated clearly, etc. And also how you deploy those out and that grouping. Do you maybe have a separate rule for your execs, which is always, it's a bit weird because they're the most targeted as such if you're worried about threats and things and CVEs. But again, it's having that organisation-wide discussion and having that policy, etc., defined and refined and the workflows being known about. It becomes more of a people discussion thing versus a technological one, to a point.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good question. I think very much moving into having those frank conversations with people. I mean, we could also put a spin on that the CEO, oh great, fantastic, my device is being patched. It might be a little inconvenient in the moment, but depending on who they're talking to, they could say, well, look, we take security seriously. And I think that there is something we hear quite clearly, especially in relation to executive teams. Got to understand the executives, they're the ones that are the high-risk users. They're the ones that if their devices are breached, there's potentially more damage that can happen to the organization. So perhaps, if anything, those are the ones that are the most important to get on the latest versions. Yet often they are the ones who are slowest at patching. So having that organizational practice, having that frank conversation to help everybody in the organization understand the importance of this and refocus, it helps to address some of those considerations. But then again, if that situation described cannot be countenanced, That's where we can add in the additional workflows from Jamf Marketplace. You've got Nudge, you've got Superman. Maybe it's a case you just have to have a bit more hands-on time if you just need to go and contact that user and say, hey, there's an update available, we need you to go ahead and perform it. But whatever way you achieve that, I think it's understanding that there is it's not a sort of adversarial relationship between the end user experience and security, but where we have a need to avoid the scenario you describe, well, we've got to rely on other tools that maybe aren't going to be quite as easy for you to deliver as an admin. So that wider point of having a frank and open conversation with those in your organization to help them understand the importance of this stuff is a really good place to start. Hopefully if it does happen, then you don't lose your job.
Entirely agree. It is about having that conversation first, but appreciate it. Thank you.
I think it's known as a CYA policy, right? Yeah.
We've got to go on that. If it's very, very quick.
I do. Sorry, folks. This is the best corner over here with all the questions.
So I work for a remote-first company. We use a zero-touch deployment enrollment process. As an IT admin, a regular problem that we have is that our Apple resellers send Macs to our users with outdated versions of macOS, which then remain outdated until a user updates them themselves. With the advent of Sonoma, Apple released an MDM spec to enforce updating during Setup Assistant. When can we expect Jamf to add this to Jamf Pro?
We can't say when, but it is on its way. It's being worked on.
Thank you.
That was quick. Perfect. Thank you.
I was ready for that one.
Okay. Ben, Andrew, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody, give it up
Thank
for
you.
the guys. That was awesome. Thank you.